We get a lot of potential buyers who very often ask the same questions. I explain the process of buying an apartment in the Dominican Republic to clients, repeating myself. Clients write this down on a piece of paper because there is so much information. That's why today I decided to make this video, and it will be a complete buyer's guide from A to Z, how to buy real estate in the Dominican Republic. The first step is to find a property. Several options here. All our projects are available on the website. Simply visit buycaribbeanhome.com. You can go and see everything. I want to point out right away that you should register first because the site has two versions and registered users can see all the information, much more than unregistered users, including the complete list of apartments available in each project. As of today, the sales terms, deposit conditions, and so on, there is a lot of information there. You go to the website and find a project you like. Of course, after that, it's best to schedule an appointment. This can be either an online appointment, which you can set up right on the website, or an in-person appointment at our office in Richmond Hill. Come in for a consultation where we can discuss the project you liked in detail, or suggest another project that might suit you better. That is, I highly, strongly recommend having a live consultation. After you choose an apartment and decide you want one in this project, the actual purchase process begins. So the first thing you need to provide is a copy of your passport and driver's license. So I need two forms of ID from the buyer. It is not necessary if you plan to, in the future, buy an apartment for yourself and include your children to do this at the initial stage. Dominican Republic, unlike Toronto. When registering ownership, you can register this apartment to anyone you choose. At the initial stage of construction or purchase during pre-construction, one name is enough. But if you want to register it under both husband and wife, we can do that right away. You provided a copy of your passport and driver's license, and we immediately put this unit on hold. Right now, properties in the Dominican Republic are selling quite quickly, so no developer will hold a unit for more than 24 hours. So the apartment is put on hold, and within 24 hours, unless someone can't make it or it's a weekend, then it can be extended. But in general, the rule is 24 hours. Within 24 hours, transfer the funds to the developer's account we provide. This account will later be included in the contract. As a rule, the reservation costs $5,000. This amount will later be included in the price of the apartment. You send $5,000, the developer confirms that they have received it. That's it, the apartment is yours, it won't go anywhere now. Next, the registration process begins. This isn't a quick process. In the Dominican Republic, there is no electronic signing. Everything is done in person. So the process is, we send your documents and several forms you need to fill out to a law firm working with our clients. This firm is in the Dominican Republic. This is the large law firm Crescent Law. After they receive the documents and the information about the apartment you have reserved, the lawyer contacts you and sends you an invoice. This same invoice serves as a contract authorizing the lawyer to represent you. He will represent you before the developer. This contract invoice needs to be signed and sent back to the lawyer by email. It will specify the amount that needs to be paid. This is the lawyer's job, and it costs 1.5% of the property's value. So the invoice is issued for 1.5% right away, but at this stage, you only pay 60% of the invoice amount. So for example, if a lawyer's fee is $3,000, you pay about $2,000 up front, and the remaining $1,000 you will pay once the project is completed and you receive ownership rights. Once the lawyer receives your payment and the signed contract, they contact the developer and request a specific set of documents. Because in the Dominican Republic today, everything is very organized and under government supervision. It's not just a matter of signing some contract to buy something. The contract must be registered with the registration chamber, notarized, and there is a specific procedure. Meanwhile, the lawyer requests a set of documents from the developer. All of this goes to the lawyer, and at this stage, the only thing required from you is to coordinate the payments. The standard payment varies by project, but typically it's 20% at contract signing, 40% during construction, or sometimes 25% at signing and 45% during construction. These payments that are made during construction are arranged individually for each customer. Some people find it convenient to pay a little bit every month, while others prefer to pay a larger amount once every 6 months. I would say that the most common option is to make a payment once every 3 months. An average project takes 2 years to build. During construction, you need to make 10 payments, one every 3 months. Once everything is agreed upon, the contract is ready, and all the documents have been thoroughly checked by the lawyer. The contract is sent to you for signing by email. You get the contract by email, print it. You can do all of this in our office or at home, sign the documents in the places your lawyer has indicated, scan them and send them back to the lawyer by email. Why do we do this? We didn't do this. Often, the buyer sometimes misses an initial or forgets to sign, which leads to big problems because everything has to be redone. The lawyer checks that you have signed everything correctly and sends you an email saying that everything is good, you can sign the contract. So you already have one signed copy. You must sign with a blue pen. Black pen signatures aren't accepted. You print out 3 more copies of the same contract and sign all 3 copies. So in total, you should have 4 copies of the contract, all fully signed by hand. You put them in a DHL envelope. Again, if this is done at our office, you just leave them with us. We take care of everything for you, and we send it back to the law firm. After the lawyer receives your contract, he schedules a meeting with the developer. The developer signs the contract on their side. Next, it goes to the registration office, where it is certified, assigned a number, and the contract is fully completed. At this stage, the lawyer sends you a copy of the completed contract via email for your convenience, and the original can be kept at the law firm if you wish, or, if you prefer, the lawyer can mail it to your home address in the same way. This concludes the deal. And it is precisely at this moment, meaning within a few days after the transaction is finalized, and considering all the mailings and so on, since this is not a quick process and takes about a month, that you need to make your first payment. The first payment, let's take a project for example, where the deposit structure is 20-40-40. That is 20 at signing, 40 during construction, and 40 after construction is completed. Accordingly, at this point, you need to pay 20% of the cost, the amount specified in the contract, minus the initial $5,000 that you paid at the time of reservation. You make this payment. The payment is made to the same account details to which you sent the $5,000. All the bank and developer details are provided in the contract. This is one of the pages of the contract. Once you have sent this money, your lawyer is fully involved in the transaction throughout the entire construction process. That is, for the subsequent payments you will make according to the dates specified in the contract every time you make a transfer. In fact, making a transfer is very easy, although sometimes there are a few issues with the first transfer. Some banks in Canada handle this differently. Some require an IBAN number, others need a SWIFT code. Minor difficulties, but rare. But after you make the first transfer, everything becomes very convenient. If you are making a transfer from the same bank, come in and say this is a repeat transfer. If you made a transfer there 2 months ago, they pull up the system and only change the amount. If these are payments made during construction and they are the same, 10 identical payments, there's nothing to change. So it's all very simple. As you make payments, after you've made a transfer, you immediately send a copy of the payment slip you received from the bank to us, to the lawyer, and then the lawyer gets a receipt from the developer confirming they received the money and sends that receipt to you. All you need to do is pay on time, and in the Dominican Republic, again, it's not like here, where if you're even a day late with something, you immediately get a penalty and so on. So everything there is pretty flexible. The date is fixed, but you can do it 2 days earlier. Being late is not recommended. Being 2 or 3 days late is undesirable. If people are away or on vacation now, it's manageable to do it a week later. After that, construction will proceed as planned. We constantly send you updates on the stage of construction. Plus, most major developers provide a link and have cameras at construction sites. This means you can watch live what's happening and see how construction is progressing. 3 months before completion, the developer notifies your lawyer and you that the project is nearing completion and is ready to finalize the deal, meaning you will receive ownership rights and keys. So at this point, you have several options. You can't do this earlier. It's only possible 3 months before construction is completed. The first option is simply to prepare the money to pay the remaining amount you owe at closing, so to speak. The second option is you can now apply for a mortgage. Banks do not issue loans earlier than 3 months before the completion of construction. A mortgage in the Dominican Republic is possible for up to 70% of the purchase price, and in some cases even a little more. Some banks allow this because property values tend to increase significantly during construction. So it's normal in the Dominican Republic for a property to appreciate by about 15 to 20% just because the project has been completed. Plus, there's also the general market appreciation. Some banks, though these are rare, base their calculations on the appraised value, meaning the current market value of the property, and their interest rates are set accordingly. But for the most part, it's either the lower value, the appraised value, or the purchase price. In most cases, it's the purchase price that is used. Now, regarding mortgages. Dominican Republic mortgage, maximum amortization 15 years. Let's take this structure as an example. You pay 20% upfront, 40% during construction, and the final payment of 40% at closing. But most often people do something different. In the Dominican Republic, you can choose any mortgage amortization period you want, unlike in Canada where it's usually set at 25 to 30 years. I recommend, if you're taking out a loan, to set your mortgage amortization to 5 years. Because this has already been calculated very precisely. If you spend a couple of months a year in your apartment, meaning you go there 3 or 4 times for 2 weeks each, then, for the rest of the time, the apartment is usually rented out short-term through the complex's management. And the income that comes from the complex management is enough so that over these 5 years, in fact, you can even pay off the remaining 40% of the loan a little faster. So you don't receive any income during those 5 years, but after 5 years your apartment is completely mortgage-free and you start receiving the full income. And loans in the Dominican Republic are somewhat more expensive than ours. That is, generally speaking, they cost about the same, maybe even a little more than in the US. For example, today our interest rate is already below 4%. But in the Dominican Republic, let's say this loan would be at 7%. But there are advantages. Loans are easy to get. Maximum is up to 70% of the value. But as a rule, people take out a loan for the remaining amount they owe the developer. And you can pay it off at any time. Most contracts don't have any penalties. So you can pay off the loan whenever you like. And there's also another option for when people aren't sure if they'll need a loan. They seem to have the money, but maybe they might need it in the future. You can close the deal with cash, and after that, at any time, you can go to the bank and get a line of credit. Credit lines in the Dominican Republic are for 50% of the property's value. But in this case, it will be based on the appraised value of the property. It will be much higher than the price you bought it at. Another detail that potential buyers often ask about is, what is the maintenance fee? How much does electricity cost? As I mentioned, the net rental income ranges from about 10 to 15%, depending on the complex and how luxurious it is. Cap Cana is bigger. So 10 to 15% is the net rental income after all expenses are deducted. What expenses do you have when you rent out the property? That's the first thing. Then there's maintenance. The maintenance fee is not very high. For an apartment of about 140 square meters, which is around 1,600 square feet, the maintenance will be about $350. If we're talking about an apartment, say 80 to 90 square meters, that's usually a 2-bedroom. Depending on the complex and maintenance fees, it's about $160 to $200 per month. And the last point is what you pay. This means 25% of the gross of the total rental income is paid to the management company that handles all the rental operations. As a rule, these are large companies, tour operators with a global reputation. They take on such complexes and they make quite a good profit from it. This includes everything, cleaning, minor repairs, so you don't have to deal with anything yourself. Well, those are basically the main points. It's all about the process and the content. So you receive the keys and the apartment is ready to be rented out. You can come and stay whenever you want, and when you don't need it, you rent it out. There are clients who don't rent it out at all who come there, especially retirees, for up to 6 months a year. But the majority of our clients are people who plan to spend about 2 months a year there and rent it out for the rest of the time. The rental income is just fantastic. See you in the next videos.